G'day, it's Gus Walland here from Gotcha for Life and Triple M. I'd love to invite you along to the Mental Fitness Gym. Go to the mentalfitnessgym.org. That is a place where you can pick up some exercises to build your mental fitness, to work on that emotional muscle, those muscles in your head that are so powerful. Please come and join us at the mentalfitnessgym.org for all that stuff to build your emotional muscle and your mental fitness.
The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leisure Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. Troy Warner here, and this is the Gameday preview podcast, I should say, about round number 25 in the NRL, which sees the Parramatta Eels take on the Brisbane Broncos up there at Suncorp Stadium, Friday night, the 23rd of August, 8 p.m. It is 10th taking on 16th on the ladder. Unfortunately, the Parramatta Eels in 16th, the Broncos in 10th. Both teams have not had the season they thought they would have in 2024, that is for sure. So that is the sorry sight of these two sides in these two positions. But anyway, more of that in a second as we get to the current day's game. Let's just have a look at some previous stats. Now, I don't think I previously mentioned this in the podcast before when the Broncos played the Eels a couple of months ago now at CommBank Stadium, which they won that game. But since 1988, when the Broncos joined the competition, there has been 66 games between these two clubs. The Brisbane Broncos hold a slight advantage, 37 wins to the Parramatta Eels 28. In Brisbane Broncos home games, which this one is, from 1988 to 2023, the Broncos have won 8. There's been 35 matches. The Broncos have won 18 and the Parramatta Eels 16. So pretty evenly matched there in that regard. Now, all 4 games at Lang Park, the old Lang Park, 1988 to 1991 were won by the Broncos, so they had a real early advantage there. But the interesting thing played at QE2 Stadium up in Brisbane, where the Broncos played for a few years, when Lang Park, now Suncorp Stadium, was being redeveloped. The Parramatta Eels, they had a massive advantage there, winning double the amount of games at that stadium. So 6 wins to the Parramatta Eels and only 3 to the Brisbane Broncos. Now, most notably, the biggest win, you could say, to the Eels was that first game in 1993 at QE2 Stadium, 51,500 people there, and Parramatta won on that occasion 12 points to 8. Michael Buettner, the great Michael Buettner, scored a try, kicked 4 out of 4 on that day. Stewie Galbraith, who I've had previously on the podcast, he was captain that day, and they came up against a team of players that read a little bit like this: Julian O'Neill, Michael Hancock, Steve Renouf, who, congratulations, he was inducted into the NRL Rugby League Hall of Fame last night. Chris Johns, Willie Kahn, Kevin Walters, Alan Langham was the captain on that day. Glenn Lazarus, Kerrod Walters, Mark Hone, Trevor Gilmeister, Alan Cann, Terry Madison. So some pretty decent players there. And the Parramatta Eels had such names as Scott Mann, Michael Erickson, Robert Muchmore, Michael Buettner, Joe Bartolo, Michael Speechley, Stewie Galbraith, as I mentioned, Paul Dunn. And the hooker on that day was the current St George Illawarra Dragons coach, Shane Flanagan, former guest on the podcast. Great bloke too, Flano. John Fernley, Cameron Blair, Dallas Weston, Mark Horrow, coached by the great Michael Cronin. So if we go back into games played at Suncorp Stadium, and there has been 19 matches played at Suncorp Stadium between 2003 and 2022, and the Parramatta Eels hold another really slight advantage there, 10 wins to the Broncos 9. So Parramatta, they don't have a bad record up there in Brisbane. They have a reasonably pretty good one. They certainly do, when they go up there, they have confidence of winning. And I must tell you, it is one of my favourite games to get up to and watch the Parramatta Brisbane games. I've got a lot of Queensland Parramatta rugby league fans and also rugby league fans as well that I've made acquaintances with from over the years, and it's always great to catch up with them and say good day and have a laugh, have a drink and talk about the old times, talk about the current times, and just basically catch up, as that is what rugby league does to people. It is a great connection tool to get everyone together. Now, if we have a look at a few of the games that, for me, myself, stand out as we go down the list, obviously, in those early days, it was a pretty good advantage for the Brisbane Broncos. They pretty much won most of the games. There was a very low-scoring game in 1989, 6 points to 2, won by Brisbane on that occasion. Mick Stone was the referee, played at Parramatta Stadium in front of 17,000 fans. As I mentioned, that game, 1993, and that was 12 points to 8 to Parramatta at QE2 Stadium, and that was played in front of 51,500 people. So a big win there to the Eels. And the next year after that, at the same venue, QE2 Stadium, it was 31,700, and it was a 16-all draw, so a pretty good couple of years there for Parramatta. If we go down the list a little bit more, obviously in 2001, Parramatta got the win, 26 points to 18 at Parramatta Stadium, and also up at QE2 Stadium as well. There was a couple of good finals played up there as well. September 23, 2001, Parramatta won 24 points to 16, and they went well on their way to playing. I think that could have been a prelim final, I think, 23rd of September, the week before the grand final, at Stadium Australia, that one. But the Eels won 24 points to 16 after the previous year. The Brisbane Broncos defeated the Eels at Stadium Australia, 16 points to 10. If we go a little bit further, now there was a massive score to Brisbane 2005, 54 points to 14 up at Suncorp. There was a massive score to Parramatta 2007. Pretty successful year for the Eels. They made the prelim final there. Parramatta 68, Brisbane 22, played at Parramatta Stadium. Chris Naninu, 3 tries. Jared Hayne, 2. Ian Highmarsh, 2. Faletti Mateo, 2. Tamana Tahu, 2. Eric Groth, Tim Smith tries. It was a great day. I think I remember Tamana Tahu doing the old basketball crossbar slam dunk on the crossbar that day. Look, if we go to some other games that I can remember, there was one up at Suncorp Stadium where Denham Kemp scored the try right on full time from a Darren Lockyer kick. I'm just trying to look for it here now. I can't seem to find it. It potentially could have been 2000 and I'm going to say 2008, 30 points to 26. The Broncos won that on that occasion. Denham Kemp, 4 tries. So correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, if that is not the case. Look, other games that stand out for me, and one of my favourite ever Eels games was the Parramatta Eels take on the Broncos, as that's who we're talking about, at Suncorp Stadium on the 24th of August. So around the very similar time as this year's game. 52 points to 34, the Eels won, I should say, on that occasion. That was my first Parramatta Eels game up at Suncorp Stadium, and that was the night that Semi Radradra, 4 tries, and I'm pretty confident that all of them were length of the field tries as well. Kirisomi Ava'a, he scored the NRL's quickest ever try. I think it was 11 seconds. I think Adam Blair took the ball up, if I'm not mistaken, off the kickoff. Lost the ball in the tackle. Kirisomi has picked it up and scored the NRL's fastest ever try. And look, to be honest, I don't think that is ever going to be broken, because 11 seconds, wow. That is really, really fast indeed. So 2019, the first game played at CommBank Stadium, and it was known as Bankwest Stadium in those days, 38 points to 10. But then later on that year, what about this result? 58-0 in a final game in front of 29,372. 58-0. I think that is still a NRL record in a finals game. 58-0. Absolutely on fire. That was a great occasion. That was a great day, that one. Dylan Brown, 2 tries. Mitchell Moses, 2. Micah Seaver, 2. So that was a great game indeed from that memory. 46-6 played up in Darwin. That was 2021. 2022, 53 points to 6 up at Suncorp. And look, just recently, as I mentioned, last year at the Gabba, around the same-ish time, August 11, 2023, 54 points to 10. The Broncos got the win that occasion, and that game was played at the Gabba due to the Women's World Cup in soccer was being played. Therefore, they were taking over Suncorp Stadium for a little bit, and that was the last, I'm pretty sure that could have been the last ever rugby league game at the Gabba. I don't think they've played any games there since, but the Broncos, that was their home ground during that World Cup, and I think Parramatta were the last team to play the Broncos there. It was a pretty forgettable night, and obviously that last game, Brisbane up against Parramatta this season, 2024, it was a 30 points to 14 win to the Broncos. If we go to the last 10 times that these two clubs have played, that was since 2019, that 58-0 win to the Eels at CommBank Stadium. Brisbane have won 4 out of the last 10. Now, Parramatta were pretty dominant in those early 10 games, or those early first of those 10 games, the last 10 games. But just recently, the Broncos have twisted that one back, winning the last 3 encounters between these sides. So Brisbane have got the edge in 2023 and so far in 2024. Look, some players that have played for both clubs that I could find and are notable ones. Brett Plowman, who I've had on the podcast, started off at Brisbane and then played at Parramatta. Stuart Kelly, he did the reverse, started at Parramatta and then went to Brisbane. Casey Maguire also started off at Parra and went to Brisbane. PJ Marsh, the same thing. The late Paul Green, during his rugby league career, obviously probably most notable playing at the Cronulla Sharks, but also did some stints at the Brisbane Broncos and the Parramatta Eels as well. Chris Walker, Corey Norman, Josh Hoffman, and I am pretty sure Todd Lowry as well did some time. If somebody could correct me, I could be wrong there, but I think he played for the Broncos and the Parramatta Eels as well. I know he played for the Melbourne Storm, I think, as well. But I think he did 1 season or 2 seasons at the Broncos. I could be wrong, but please correct me if I'm wrong, because I would like to know that. But I am pretty confident that he did that. Okie dokie. To this game on Friday night. Now, look, there is some big outs for the Broncos and also the Eels as well. Look, if we go to the Brisbane Broncos team, no Reece Walsh. He is out for a few weeks, possibly the season, with I think it's a fractured hand. So he is out. Obviously, before this, no Payne Haas or Ezra Mem as well. But Tristan Saylor is at fullback. Selwyn Cobbo and Jesse Arthurs are on the wing. Katoni Staggs, Dean Mariner are in the centres. Josh Rogers, who played in that game at Combank Stadium earlier on in the year for the Broncos, he retains that 5/8 position. Adam Reynolds is the halfback and captain. The props are Corey Jensen and Xavier Willison. Billy Walters, the halfback. Brendan Piakura, the second rower. Jordan Rickey and Pat Carrigan. Blake Moser, Kobe Hetherington, Josiah Karapani and Martin Tapa'u are on the interchange bench. For the Eels, a couple of changes, not too many. Clint Gutherson, captain and fullback. Mike Acevo, he came off the bench last week against the Roosters. He comes back into the starting side. Will Penisini, Blaze Talangi in the centres. Sean Russell on the wing. Dylan Brown, Dijon Arcee as the halfback. Regan Campbell-Gillard, Sean Lane moves into the front row with Wiramu Greg suspended. Brendan Hands is the hooker. Kelma Tulagi, he gets a starting spot in the second row. Bryce Cartwright, Joe Offahengawi locks the scrum in the interchange bench. Joey Lussick, Maki Hesse Makatoa, Luca Moretti is back from injury, and Dan Kerr as well, who has been playing some pretty good footy off the interchange bench. A few games there off the interchange bench. I've been very impressed with his efforts. So, look, as we go to the team stats, as I mentioned before, the last 2 games have been won by the Broncos. The form guide for these two sides doesn't look too impressive over the last 5 games. The Broncos are 2 wins out of their last 5. The Parramatta Eels are 1 win out of their last 5. So their 1 win came against the Warriors over in New Zealand. The Broncos, they defeated the Cowboys 2 weeks ago now, as the Broncos had the bye last week. That's another interesting point. This week is the second team in a row that we are playing off the bye. The Roosters had the bye before we played them, and now the Broncos have had the bye before we play them. Anyway, it just seems that Parramatta are the team that gets to play teams off byes. It happened last year, happened this year. I wonder if it's going to happen next year. But anyway, you got to play who's in front of you. But they defeated the Cowboys 42 points to 18, and then their only other win was the week before they got smashed by the Bulldogs against the Newcastle Knights, 30 points to 14. Completion rates pretty even, 76% each. So they are holding the ball relatively well, which will be key in this game. If Parramatta have 620 points conceded, the Broncos 493. Points scored, there's about 66 points difference. The Broncos have scored 66 more points than the Parramatta Eels. Scoring points is not a problem for the Eels and the Broncos. The biggest problem for the Eels is their defence. As I said before, conceded 620 points. So defence is an issue there. So they will have to tighten that up if they're going to get a win at this stadium, in which the Eels have played 26 times for 12 wins, 46% win rate. So not a bad win rate at this venue. As I said, the last couple of years the Broncos have got the wins up there, but the Eels at Suncorp, they seem to go a different leg. They have confidence. They didn't have such a good game at Magic Round, but against the Storm at Suncorp Stadium. But against the Broncos, it could be a different story. As I said, Parramatta, they need to get off to a good start. They nearly got off to a good start last week, having the Roosters having dropped the ball on their first set. So just like the week before with the Panthers, with Dane Laurie dropping the ball as well. So they need to get off to a good start. Their discipline needs to be in check. Their edge defence needs to be in check as well. That's always been a problem at Parramatta. Otherwise, the fast men of the Broncos, like Selwyn Cobbos, Jesse Arthurs and Cody Staggs, Tristan Saylor as well, are going to get around you and score points. So Parramatta, they need to get off to that good start. They need to defend well. I think the key players to watch out for the Broncos, obviously Adam Reynolds' kicking game is going to be very important to the Broncos, as was Mitchell Moses if he was playing for the Eels. But Adam Reynolds, he has a great kicking game. He has a great short kicking game as well. So that will be one advantage for the the Brisbane Broncos. Pat Carrigan, he's just a workhorse. He can do 60 tackles a game, chuck in some hit-ups as well. I'm sort of liking the Parramatta Eels forward pack compared to the Brisbane Broncos. Look, they're no fuss players, these Brisbane Broncos forwards. They get their jobs done. But I think Regan Campbell-Gillard, look, he's been in the news the last couple of weeks about where he's going to be playing in 2025. Sean Lane hasn't had a great season. Kilmer, he was the player of the match, as far as I'm concerned, last week against the Roosters, so great to see him back. Joe Offahengawi has been solid this season as well. So I'm going to actually like the matchup between Brendan Hands and Billy Walters. I think that'll be an interesting one there. Brendan Hands, again, a tackling machine, but he can dart out of dummy half as well. So I'd like to see, I'm going to like to see that battle between the number 9s. As I said, they just got to watch the edge defence, and otherwise these fast men will get around the Eels. So, look, I'm going to tip Parramatta in this game. Call me silly. 16th playing 10th. If the Parramatta do successfully win this game against the Broncos, they will, I guess, potentially avoid Spoon Bowl, which is coming in round 27 if they lose this game. This is obviously recorded before the Tigers take on the Manly Sea Eagles at Leichhardt. So if they win that game, they've got to bye, and then it'd be possibly Spoon Bowl coming up. So look, it's going to be interesting what's going to happen. But if Parramatta can win this game, then potentially they may just keep themselves off the bottom. So I think there's a lot of motivation for the Eels to do that. They don't want to come last. Obviously the fans don't want to see them come last either, but so they have a lot of motivation to get this win to stay off the bottom. For the Broncos, look, there is a massive slight, and I'm talking really, really slight chance that a finals berth is within reach for them. They obviously need to win every single game that is remaining and results go their way. The Dragons sit on 28 points. I'm tipping them to win this weekend against the Sharks, so they'll go to 30. So I think 32 will be the cutoff. I think potentially 30 on for and against. So look, the Broncos, they just have to win every single game that is remaining this year. And I think the Broncos, they have to play the Storm in the last round, I think it is. And obviously Parramatta this weekend, they play the Dolphins at Suncorp, who are also fighting for a top 8 spot as well. I think they are on 26 points. 2 points outside the 8. So even if the Broncos win this game, then next weekend is the do or die game as well. So look, the Broncos, they have a slight chance, but I don't think they will make the top 8. For the Eels, a bit more motivation for them not to finish last in this competition, the NRL, because that is no good. Look, I'm going to tip Parramatta to win. I'm going to tip a score of 28 points to 16. And I am going to tip, let me just have a look here. I'm going to tip my old friend Will Penasini as the first try scorer. Look, I'd love to see Will get a try. He got a pretty interesting try against the Panthers a few weeks ago. Look, I hope he gets the first try. Look, very good odds on that it could be Mike Acevo as well in the corner. But I'm going to stick with Will as the first try scorer in this game. Let me know your thoughts on the first try scorer and the score. Look, if you see the post tomorrow morning, Friday, on Instagram, it'll be the Pick the Score competition thanks to Grips Socks, where you can win a 2-pack of a colour of their Grips Socks. That competition is on Instagram, so keep an eye out on the Instagram page for that one. So put your score prediction in that one, and if you correctly guess the score and the winner, you will either win a pair of Grips Socks, a 2-pack, or you will go into the draw anyway. If there are multiple winners, then there will be a randomizer, and a winner will be selected that way, and you just have to be a follower of the Paracave podcast and Grips Socks as well. Open to Australian residents only, and I will throw in a Paracave podcast hat as well for the winner. So stay tuned to the Instagram page for that one. Look, thank you very much for listening to this episode, this game day preview of the Brisbane Broncos versus the Parramatta Eels at Suncorp Stadium. Look, before I go, I probably should have said this at the start, but congratulations to Ron Coote, the 14th Immortal in the NRL. It was announced last night, a really worthy winner of that. I don't actually know if you are a winner of that, but he certainly is an inductee, I guess, as an Immortal of Rugby League, the highest honour you can get in Rugby League. So, look, fantastic career, 151 games for South Sydney and 108 games for the Eastern Suburbs Roosters, as they were known at that times. And, look, a fantastic grand final record as well. 9 grand finals in 11 seasons. How about that? And he won 4 premierships at the South Sydney Rabbitohs and consecutive premierships at Eastern Suburbs in 1974 and 1975 as well, where Jack Gibson was the coach, I do believe. Also played for Australia 23 times and was captain for 3 games in the 1970 World Cup. Also represented New South Wales in interstate games 15 times as well. So, look, a magnificent honour to be named as a Immortal of Rugby League. And look, one of the great things about Ron Coote was he founded the Men of League program. So it's now called the Family of League, which supports former players, officials, referees who have fallen on hard times. So they offer practical assistance, grants for medical operations, mentors players about to retire from the game as well, and promotes the game in regional areas as well. So I do believe that you can become a member of the Family of League, which helps support them raise money to help these former players as well. So check that one out. Just Google Family of League, and I'm sure there'll be a website there. But So a great thing to do that as well. Ron Coote is also a life member of the Sydney Cricket Ground, and a plaque in the Walk of Honour there commemorates his career as well. Also an Order of Australia medal as well. So look, a very worthy winner or inductee, I should say, of the 14th Immortal. So congratulations to Ron Coote. And look, as a Parramatta fan, look, a little bit disappointed that Brett Kenny or Peter Sterling or Ray Price or Mick Cronin didn't get the nod. Maybe next time. I do believe this could have been possibly Ron's third nomination, maybe fourth nomination of becoming an Immortal, and he got it at 80 years of age. So I think, look, hopefully for Brett Kenny, Peter Sterling, Ray Price, Mick Cronin, there is time left, and maybe they will become the 15th, maybe 16th Immortals of rugby league as well. So, look, that's my money is on Brett Kenny, as you have seen in podcasts posts I've sent before. So, as I would love to have seen Brett be named last night, but it wasn't to be. Congratulations to Ron Coote, fully deserved there as well. Look, just quickly as well before I go, if you do, I will be heading up to Brisbane for the game between the Parramatta Eels and the Brisbane Broncos. So if you see me out and about at Suncorp Stadium, come up, say good day. We'll also be at the Lord Alfred Hotel at 5 p.m. as well for a bit of a get-together of Eels fans. There'll be some Eels legends there as well, so I will be there as well. So come and say good day. It'll be great to see some listeners up in Brisbane. So keep an eye out. You'll see me. I'll have my podcast hat on, Parramatta jersey on. I don't know which one I'm going to wear yet, but stay tuned for that one. But hopefully I can see some listeners up there in Brisbane. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for the support, and I apologise for not having a interview-based podcast come out this week. I just didn't get a podcast guest, unfortunately, this week to run with, and was just running out of time and didn't get that one on Thursday. So I really apologise for that. I know that you guys were waiting for it. I'm hoping to secure some podcast guests whilst I'm up in Queensland on the weekend for future episodes. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. And look, go Para!
Hello, Paracave podcast listeners. My name is Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty and long-term sponsor of the Paracave podcast. If you're looking to sell your property or buy, or just curious to know what your property is worth in today's market, give me a call today on 0421 588 445.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.